There's one I've seen that's like, why does she look like Scarlett Johansson? And someone said, have you been to Sex Safe?
This may be the last episode in this series on modern masculinity, or it might not be. We've gone from the first episode where I looked at Jordan Peterson and why he's so popular.
You can either choose your damn limitation, or you can let it take you unaware when you're 30.
There I met Neil, who I followed into the second episode at his barbershop in Leeds. The third episode I did was with 6 quite well-known men. The fourth episode was with Football Beyond Borders, a charity which uses football as a form of outreach. I was thinking out the dog. Oh my days! And the last episode we did was in Brighton with some of the men from a band of brothers.
That's like my son in football. Took him to a Brighton game, bought him all the Brighton gear, and he cheered on Huddersfield. Yeah.
I loved it. I really enjoyed the conversations I've met some amazing people, and your comments ended up being really, really important in terms of how we built the next episodes. So thank you very much for engaging with this series and putting forward your ideas and just being so nice, mostly. But yeah, I know there's so much more that could be covered, definitely. So I know I would very much like to come back to this subject. I'm going through the comments here, looking at some of the points, and I want to answer some of the recurring themes that have come up. This question has come up a lot. Modern masculinity brought to you by ... some woman. Get a guy to do a modern femininity series. Thing is, it was my idea because I was really, really interested in this, and I think that perhaps these people agree with me that identity politics in many ways feels like it's gone a little bit too far. I don't really want to sit and talk about my experience as a woman. I don't want to write about having a vagina or, you know, my race or my ethnicity or background all the time. As a journalist, I feel like I can feed my own curiosity, listen to other people, and try and like communicate some of that forwards to a wider audience. That's what I see my role as being. So I've not tried to push ideas onto people. I've really tried to let people say what it is they think and have the room to express themselves. So these questions about, imagine if they did a series on women and femininity and it was presented by a man. Well, if the man came and did it with respect and listening and didn't try and jump down women's throats and did it in exactly the same kind of way, I would think that would be a great thing. And actually it kind of pushes us forward and makes us have to step out of our own bubble, which I think is the only way that we can move forward.
Nobody speaks about the 50-yard pass that kills Balmon and it causes a red card for him.
A couple of people have made this observation. See how her accent changed depending on her audience. Now that was all this person has said. Do your inevitable montage of me speaking in all these funny accents. I meet a lot of men who, as soon as they're around any other men, they start speaking completely differently. You just said Brexit's kind of life still. This crisis in masculinity. I never do any gardening ever, but that's not what I want to focus on today.
Good morning.
If I'm totally honest, doing these videos and working for The Guardian, sometimes, you know, you feel like you're supposed to speak in a certain way and you're supposed to, you know, to be professional. You know, when I get in a conversation with people, I just feel like there's a gap if I'm trying to be too kind of like professional and whatever, and it puts barriers up. So I find that the way I spoke to people was how I naturally wanted to speak to people and how I do speak anyway. But yeah, I can see how that would throw people.
You won't find anybody who's average in all respects. It just doesn't exist. And it's called the jaggedness principle.
Iman, why are you misrepresenting men all the time by going to these fringe, marginalised niches and claiming it's about male masculinity? Again, you're going to fringe groups and trying to imply generalisations to the public. Good attempt though, keep going.
That really is lovely, isn't it?
A lot of points people made about the men I've spoken to not being representative, and I just feel like there's no average man. There is no Joe Blogs. That doesn't exist. You can't get everybody into a series like this. What I said I was going to try and do was get some different voices that we don't usually hear from.
Like, people need to communicate more, like, just judge me because I'm wearing a hood.
People don't like what they don't understand, but then people aren't looking to try and understand the things that they don't like.
Broadly speaking, I've achieved that kind of aim I went out with. We've got young men, teenagers, who we speak on behalf of when we're really concerned about, you know, mental health and knife crime and everything, but we never really get them to speak for themselves. I've spoken to Jordan Peterson fans without kind of jumping down their throat and being like, what he says is really damaging here. Like, I've sat down, I've gone like, let me just hear what you think.
He's absolutely challenging what is, means particularly Guardian readers, I should think, and a lot of what they think and say.
He expresses his ideas without any worry about whether he's PC or not, and that's refreshing.
So for those who feel like they personally haven't been represented in this series, I do apologise, but I do hope that there are threads that come throughout this, the things people have said about their relationships with their dads, or things that, 'cause everyone's got a dad, the things that people have said about, role models growing up and societal expectation. And, I just hope these threads resonate with you regardless of where you're from. And also regardless of if you're a man or a woman, that's what this is supposed to be doing, is building bridges every which way. So. Oi, bruv, someone said give this lad a bloody award or something. Absolutely brilliant journalism. 1.3 thousand likes. Yes, Hassan. We are not related. Yes, Hassan. Oh my goodness, it's just so nice. Just on what's on my screen now, there's one thing saying, great journalism, so glad this is being talked about. Same attitude changed my life, awesome journalist, what an incredible series, respect to Iman Amrani for reminding me what real journalism looks like. So there's been a lot of discussion about what real journalism looks like, and I think quite a few traditional journalists would be laughing at this series being called real journalism. Some journalists would think that I have kind of been too soft, and that I should have pushed back, and that I should be presenting the alternative arguments at every point in the interest of balance. So there's lots of questions about what real journalism is. It seems to me that if I'm going to go out and try and have these conversations with members of the public, they're not people with profiles, they're not famous, like it would be weird for me to challenge them in a way that you might with a politician or somebody who's got like a status or authority and they have responsibilities to answer to. Like, I'm just trying to talk to guys about their experiences. If I push back really hard, if I start trying to present the balanced view and put the opposite of what they're saying up against them, it's just going to shut down the conversation, really. And that's why I felt like it was really, really important in this to just be allowing them that space to express themselves.
Or fella.
You're going to say be a better man then, weren't you? Stop yourself.
There was one question which I asked at the beginning of the series, which was, is masculinity in crisis? Because this is the language we often hear around masculinity.
Bullying.
The Me Too movement against sexual harassment.
Well, Gillette's latest ad campaign is a war on man and masculinity and mankind as we know it. It's my view.
The hashtag Me Too movement claimed 2 new victims, common sense and male dignity.
Men. Is masculinity in crisis?
That's a really big question, and I didn't ever think we were going to answer that necessarily. What this series has taught me is that everything can feel like it's in a crisis when the conversation is so polemic and it's just kind of two completely opposing ends of a spectrum, which don't kind of represent loads of the people who are in the middle, who are kind of going, actually, now I feel like this might be a crisis because I don't know what I'm supposed to be saying. And that feels the same when it comes to politics, when it comes to the state of affairs today, women, young people, everything feels like it's a crisis because the debate is just so extreme.
Tofu eating, male feminist virtue signalling, beta orbiter, soy boys.
I've had conversations that have challenged my ideas. I've had conversations that have put me on a path and made me think, the idea of community, really, we need to properly engage with that. Intergenerational relationships, like the idea of purpose and meaning. But it's opening up, going and speaking to people, having a discussion in a way that allows people to express themselves and not feel attacked all the time. And it's two-way, you know? It works both ways. And those are such simple things which I feel like they get thrown out the window because of the way we engage on social media, because of these like increasingly separated and fractured groups that we have. So I just want to say, whether or not there is a crisis of masculinity, there's so much positivity. There are so many amazing people out there. There are people that we do not hear from, and they have a lot to say. And I think that it's from there that we're going to come up with solutions to the individual questions in this kind of broad area of masculinity and whether or not it's a crisis. So there you go. That's my findings. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe so you can stay up to date with all of the stuff that we're working on here. And yeah, just let us know what you thought about the series. See you later. Corny.